Hi, I'm Jodie Sweetin.
And I'm Amy McCarthy, the Director of Social Work at the Adolescent Substance Use and Addiction Program at Boston Children's Hospital.
And Amy and I have been doing 3 seasons of Awkward Conversations, and we're very excited to welcome you back to Season 3, where we will once again try to give you as parents the tools you need to raise happy, healthy, and substance-free kids who are empowered to make smart choices throughout their lives. Now, the most important tool you have in this effort is a strong relationship that can create a bond and trust with your child. And yes, of course, your job is to protect them. But more importantly, by being present today and building that bond, you can give them the tools that they need to make the smart choices to protect themselves. And we will also keep reminding you, you do not need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Amy, I'm so excited to get to do this with you in person this time.
Third time's the charm.
Right? Joining our show today is a guest whose groundbreaking work in conscious parenting is revolutionary. She's written 5 books, 3 of which are New York Times bestsellers, including The Conscious Parent, which Oprah said has changed the way she looked at parenting. She holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from Columbia University and specializes in the integration of Western psychology with Eastern philosophy. She also has a conscious coaching institute where she trains coaches to practice her philosophy, as well as a private practice where she consults with families and couples. We are thrilled to welcome you to Awkward Conversations. Dr. Shefali, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to have you start by telling people a little bit about what conscious parenting is.
Well, to delve into conscious parenting, I just need to cover the ground on what the other model is. So the current prevalent model out there in the world, I call it the traditional parenting model. It's quite likely the model that you and I and everyone who's here has been raised in. It's the model that says parents know best, parents are in dominance, they are in control, and children need to kind of be seen, not heard. And there's a lot of fear, punishment, shaming, and all the good things that we all got a healthy dose of in our own childhoods. And that model is predicated on a lot of parental control. Mm-hmm. Well, conscious parenting is what I teach, which really shifts the entire traditional parenting model and turns it on its head. It's a new way of looking at ourselves and our children, which really moves away from parental control to connection and really teaches the parent and challenges the parent that it isn't the child that needs to be fixed, because the child is not the one that's broken, but it's really the parental self that needs to be healed before we even dare to touch the beauty and mess up the child's essence. So we don't look at the child as something to be fixed or controlled or managed until we have looked at ourselves as parents. So this is the pivot, and it makes a world of difference when the parent starts to look at themselves, and then from that place of greater healing, consciousness, awareness, attunement, then seeks to flow with the child versus control and micromanage and curate the child.
Right. I love that approach to parenting. I have tried to do that with my girls. I have 2 daughters who are 15 and almost 13. So I'm very much in that place right now. And I've always tried to listen and understand. And I know, Amy, we've talked about that before and just how important building that bond is. Now, how would you define a strong relationship between a parent and a child?
Well, contrary to popular belief, when your child argues with you, when your child defies you, those very well could be the hallmarks of a close, connected relationship, because that child feels safe. Mm-hmm. That child feels like he or she has permission to just let loose. They are aware that their big feelings are going to be tolerated.
Well, I'm doing great then. No. My kids are super defiant. It's great. No.
Yes, but that is the sign. Yeah. Unlike what we traditionally thought, traditionally we thought the signs of a good relationship was compliance, obedience, a puppet. Now we are aware that those things meant suppression. We want our children, just like we are, longing for ourselves. We long for our children and for ourselves to be free, which means to be expressive, to stand up, to speak loud, to be assertive, to defy, to be critical, to be curious. Those are the signs of a healthy relationship. And for a long time, I too had a problem with this when my daughter would, talk to me like I was her buddy, and I would keep saying, I'm not your friend. Don't talk to me like I'm your friend. And she was like, but you are my friend. And I realized that what she felt was close went against what the traditional model said, right? The traditional model wanted our children to be meek and docile and compliant. And conscious parenting really debunks that now and has laid out a whole new pathway for an entirely new way of relating with our children and being with our children.
I mean, I think that is so incredibly important, and really allowing children to have the freedom, to make mistakes. One of the things I always say, and I've talked about it on the show, is that I feel as a parent, my job is to just kind of be the bumper rails in the bowling alley and keep them going forward in a direction. But I can't necessarily save you from all of the things, but I kind of got to keep you just going forward and really allowing children to make their own mistakes and to feel confident. What you just said, talking about being a friend and a parent, I know that's always been a gray area. I think for a lot of parents, we feel like we're supposed to, have this firm boundary. How do you balance being, parent and friend and confidant, but also, somewhat of an enforcer of rules? What is the best way to manage those often differing perspectives?
Well, it's tricky, and you definitely don't want your child to be your best friend, right? So let me make that clear. Your child is not your friend, and certainly not your confidant. So parents often get the lines blurry, and they use their children as therapists, as surrogate parents, and as best friends. No, your child is your child. Now, having said that, you can be your child's best friend, meaning your child can look to you as their confidant. But let's make no mistake, you should not replace their peer group. You are not their drinking buddy. You are not going to go out to the nightclubs with them, yes?
Right.
But you can definitely be friendly. Now, so you can put on the I can be friendly hat, but you don't have to be the best friend hat.
Right.
And then, having said that, you can also be in charge without being in control. And I talk about that a lot. You are definitely the leader of what comes in the house. You get to decide if you have cookies in every drawer. You get to decide if you have what kind of friends are walking through your door. You are in charge of creating the conditions for which then they can rise within.
Right.
But within those conditions, give them freedom, give them control, give them permission, give them space. So you create the conditions for them to rise, but you do not have to micromanage their every move within the space. But you are the curator of that space.
Got it. And I would imagine that also comes into play more, in older kids, especially, my daughters are middle school and high school now. And that definitely, I start feeling it where it's that thing where it's like, I have to sort of trust that some of the things have, been sinking in at this point, and that, you've heard some of the things I've said about how to make those good choices, because controlling is, I find, a certain way for my kids to turn away from me and definitely not want to have anything to do with what I have to say or with sharing anything with me.
Yes. So it all depends on the parent's availability, emotional space. Many of us parents are so stressed out. We're so overwhelmed by our own life that we don't have internal space to be there for our children. Then number two, we have so many pressures that we've decided need to come with modern parenting. So we need to take them to lacrosse, and we need to take them to violin, and they need to be A-grade students, and they need to speak 3 languages. So we've decided, that that is what makes a good parent. But that's not true. It's not true at all. So because we've decided that being a good parent means raising a superstar, super achiever, super perfect kid, that is taking the life out of us. Now we don't have emotional availability to be there for our children and to allow them to simply play, to have their big feelings, to lead a simple life. And so we've gone off a really dangerous, pernicious trajectory because we've decided what a good parent should be. And I teach in conscious parenting and through all my books that what you think is a good parent is really a failure as a parent, because you're actually raising an anxious child who believes that their identity is dependent on their grades or their looks or their appearance or their social group. Right. And that is actually very emotionally dysfunctional and unhealthy for them.
Right. One of the things I tell my kids all the time is like, look, I'm just trying to raise good humans. The grades, the job, all of that stuff is going to change so many times over your life. It's what you think you're going to do at 18 is not going to be what you're doing at 35. And I think as parents, like you were just saying, we put that pressure on ourselves that our kids have to have it figured out.
Right. What you're saying is that you've kind of stepped out of the traditional trajectory and you've stepped out of the matrix, and you are okay being outside the traditional way. But most parents are not. They're terrified. Yeah. They're terrified that if they step out of the matrix, then they are not good parents. Right. So if you are a parent listening to this and if you're feeling stressed out and a failure, it's not you so much as that you have bought into what culture has told you is success and happiness and achievement.
You're watching Awkward Conversations Season 4.
Saving lives means staying informed. Knowing the dangers of using fake prescription pills can help those you care about and keep our community safe. As a parent, educator, neighbor, or friend, we all play a role in building safe and healthy futures for ourselves and our loved ones. Do your part to take the first step today. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access education, prevention, and treatment resources. Fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl are deadly. Be their protector. Be informed. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com.
Welcome back to Awkward Conversations Season 4.
So here we are in Season 3, and we've been talking about building bonds as being one of the most essential pieces of helping young people avoid a relationship with substances. I know certainly that's a big topic in our work at Boston Children's Hospital. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the strategies you talk with parents about to help them build those bonds?
Well, most substance use and abuse comes because of a deep disconnection to the self. And when children are not allowed to be who it is they are and be in alignment with their inner knowing, they are at a loss. And then the substance becomes the proxy connection that takes the surrogacy of the self. It's a surrogate connection to the self. So that's the entire foundation of conscious parenting. And my latest book is called The Parenting Map. The Parenting Map. It's 20 steps to create those bonds. And I talk about how in this modern era, with technology, with screens, with substances available everywhere, that we parents need to be very, very intentional about making sure that our children stay connected to who it is they are. We all have different children and many different children in one family. And the more you can attune and recognize and honor and celebrate that child, so that that child doesn't feel that they are needing to be ashamed or lesser than for not being the typical child. Now you're teaching that child, who I am is amazing. I need to trust my voice. I need to speak up. So when we foster these natural qualities in the child, and I call it their essence, and you go for a beeline for your child's essence, and you make it your life's purpose as a parent to make sure that your child realizes that who it is they are is worthy as they are. That is immunity. I'm not saying it's a surefire guarantee, but it's an immunity against substance abuse later. And when the child feels like they belong, that their voice matters, that they can be heard and seen for who it is they are, it's quite likely that that child will less go towards substances. Because substances at the end of the day are a balm, it's a medicine, it's medication for the pain. And what is the pain about? The pain is a lack of connection within the self and in the family. So realize that substance abuse is not just, bad behavior or risky behavior. It's really an answer, although a dysfunctional answer, to a deep despair. And the deep despair comes from deep inner disconnection.
As someone who has struggled with addiction and has been sober and gone through all of this, hearing some of these things and recognizing some of these things is so important. And being a parent now and being on the other side of it and knowing the things that I can do to help listen to my kids and to help them understand and be in acceptance as opposed to constantly be in battle with themselves is so important and so key. And, acceptance is not something that most of us, a space that a lot of us like to live in. It's a lot of, well, what can we do to fix it? What can we do to change it? What can we, and I think allowing, you talking about allowing kids to just be themselves, to be human, to be seen, to be imperfect, and to allow ourselves that freedom too. I tell my parents or my kids all the time that as a parent, I'm just doing my best, and sometimes I make mistakes, and sometimes I have to go back and apologize or say, I took my stress out on you, and that wasn't fair. How could what? I'm sorry. I'm in a better space to listen now. What can we do? And it changes things. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect by any means, but be willing to be wrong.
And the more substances we use in our life, even our devices, even our phones, even our TV, or even, even being addicted to the gym or to going out, that is showing our children that we can't be within ourselves in alignment, in peace, in stillness. Right. And therefore, they will learn that behavior as well, that they need to bolt, they need to run, they need to hide, they need to distract. Right. And soothe through these artificial medications of substances. And substances are really, and through technology especially now, the plague of our family life. Yeah. And we don't look at being on Instagram and social media as an addiction, but they are now full-fledged addictions that are taking away from our ability to be present with our children and present to ourselves. And so our children are modeling that. They're seeing this deep and dire disconnection.
How does one reframe their relationship, even if their kid is a little bit older? How do we start doing this as soon as possible?
It's never too late. Now, yes, is there an optimal window called childhood? Yes, that we want to kind of capitalize on, right? We want to have done some connection by the time our child goes to college. That would be great. But if that never happened, and say you were the most distracted, disconnected parent, you were an absent parent, you can never change your past, but you can allow your past to teach you how to be in the present. And you can be grateful for whatever your past did to bring you right here, right now. And the only moment we have is right here, right now. So regretting what we were not in our past is never going to serve us. So how can I show up now? What can I do today to tell my child that I'm a different person? How can I act differently? It's not just the behaviors which are meaningless. They have to be consistent over time. And they're not just words that are empty. They have to be followed up by action. So behavior needs to be consistent. Words need to be followed by action. But you can always start in the present moment.
Now, are there ways that you can tell maybe that your relationship with your child isn't as strong as it could be, or is broken, or that, communication is something that you need to start really working on?
Well, our children could enter problems and problematic behaviors separate from us. You could be the best parent, you could be the most connected parent. So just know that this is not immunity against all negative behaviors. So you do want to look for signs. Why I said that was that many times people who are practicing conscious parenting become complacent. Right? They're like, oh, I'm doing everything Dr. Shefali says. Why would my child fall into bad behavior? The two are correlated, but then just because you're a conscious parent doesn't absolutely prevent your child from being in dysfunctional relationships. So you do want to always look for signs. Please always be vigilant. Don't be naive. Yes, look into their backpack. Try to, have a handle on their social media. Let your child know, I'm going to be looking at your social media. I'm going to be looking in your backpack. Now, parents will tell me, but Dr. Shefali, you said conscious parenting was not about control. So I always say it's not about being controlling, but you got to be aware of things in your child's environment. So because social media is about strangers and people you won't see in your lifetime, you want to keep an eye, at least till they're 15 years old. And then you want to give them more and more freedom and more trust, of course. Right. And you want to have open dialogue. So you want to know who your children's friends are. You want to know where they are. Smell their breath when they come home at night. Yes. Don't be naive to the influences out there. And again, spend time with your child, play with your child, go on outings with your child. Try to be inviting of your child in all possible ways. Bond with them, play games with them. Connection will create the immunity, but it doesn't create a surefire, complete, absolute obstacle to negative behavior. But do maintain that connection. And then the second thing is be aware, look for signs, look for red flags. Who are they hanging out with? Try to create alternative surrogates. Maybe bonds with your sister, bonds with your friends, bonds with a coach.
Yeah.
I always say, as your kid grows older, try to outsource the influence. If you can, get a therapist, get a coach, get other adults in your children's life.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, but you want to be awake, you want to be aware, you don't want to get complacent, you don't want to fall asleep.
I love what you talk about really helping to expand sort of your child's circle of influence, particularly as they get older. One of the things I love about my daughter's school is they have a big ceremony for the freshmen for their first year, where they get to invite their circle of care, which is their parents, but also 4 or 5 other adults in their life who they trust, who are important, who show up for them, who their parents also trust. And I loved seeing that in my daughters. And I have always been really fortunate that I have some great friends in my life that my girls know. They're your aunties. Mom, I trust them. I trust their judgment. I know as you get older, their mom is not going to be the person for everything. I know that. And I can't take it personally, but I can also make sure that, they have those people in their lives that they trust and that I trust, that they can turn to, and that maybe I don't need to know every single secret that's going on in their lives, but I do know that they have other people that they can turn to. And that's been something really important, for both of my girls.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed hearing you tell all the stories about how you've raised your daughters. It sounds like you're doing a killer job.
I try. Again, not by no means perfect. But as I'm hearing what Dr. Shefali is talking about, I do feel a little bit more confident. There's all of those things that doesn't create that open bond and that open relationship. And teaching my girls to be present. Meditation is something that I've done with my girls for a long time. My older one is now like, I don't need to meditate with you, Mom. But my younger one and I sometimes will still, before bed, I meditate almost every night. And, we'll just listen to like a nice little easy, mellow, relaxing something before bed just to kind of center ourselves and do that. I just, hearing so many of those tools about it's more important to be present than to be perfect is really, really key for parents.
I think about, hearing you say how much of, anxiety it takes off your kind of shoulders to think about this way of parenting. And I imagine there's lots of listeners and parents and caregivers listening to this right now taking that huge deep breath. And it just makes me think of if they're doing that, then that impact on their children is so great to be able to take that step back and not be sitting in that anxiety.
Yeah.
Dr. Shefali, do you have ideas about like rituals or traditions that you might do with your family at home or with families that you've worked with that you think our listeners might benefit from?
Well, I think the main one is to really simplify your life. Your child doesn't need to be a superstar. Your child doesn't need to be overscheduled. I think that is one of the greatest plagues that have overtaken modern families, of overscheduling your children. And it's really harmful because that creates stress creates anxiety creates stress, that creates anxiety. So learn to simplify your life. And that was one of the benefits of COVID, where people had no choice but to really simplify their life and their existence. And guess what? Everyone kind of survived. Like you said, present, not perfect, showing up as a real human being. Our children don't need perfect parents who are always driven or always giving them a life lesson or always giving them an opinion or everything is a sermon.
Right.
Children just need someone who's low-key, chill, calm, present, available. Children want to look at the parent and see abundance. abundance in being, where the parent is always letting the child know that life will be fine. We got this. Be here right now. And for the parent who can embody that, the relax, be calm, be relaxed, be chill, we're going to be fine attitude, that child will grow up to be resilient. But we think that they need to see the parent who's always driven, who's always working. No, the children pick up on the energy level, on the anxiety level. And the attitude to handling life with peace and calm and relaxation, that's what creates resilience.
Resilience is such an important key thing that we have to teach our kids, and the ability to deal with whatever comes and to, sort of roll with the punches that life often throws at us. And I think, going back to creating those bonds and that relationship, it is imperative that we have that bond, because then as you see your kids starting to change or pull away or be different, when we have that connection with someone, you can start noticing, something feels off, something doesn't feel right, and that it's not about never making a mistake, but it's about how do you come back. It's just such a brilliant way to take some of that pressure off, I think, of parents and kids in the idea of what their relationship should be. Yeah.
Resilience doesn't come when everything's going well.
Right.
So when we don't lose our mind, when there is an opportunity to lose our mind, that is how they create resilience. So we need to invite moments where we could be potentially losing our minds, but not lose our minds.
Dr. Shefali, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to hear a little bit more about some of the current projects you're working on, as well as some of your books and where people can find them so that they too can join the conscious parenting movement.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have tons of courses on my website. I have 5 books, as you said, and I have a coaching institute. I do an annual summit every year if people want to come meet me in person. Everything's on my website. They can just go to drshefali.com. And if you want to do this work, as I do, as I help parents become more conscious, helping children become more resilient, then join my coaching institute, because it's all online. It's 5 months. It gives you a fabulous training on how to help other parents, because we need other parents out there doing this work and being ambassadors. So thank you for having me and allowing me to speak on it.
Absolutely. I am running out today and getting the parent map, the parenting map. I am very excited to read that. Now, to become a parenting coach that you were talking about through your website, do people need to show up with any qualifications, any schooling, education already, or can they take your courses and go from there?
Yeah, because I wanted to open my doors wide, I don't ask for a qualification, but I do have a prerequisite course that I teach, so that'll allow everyone to start at the same starting line. But most people who join my course, and let me tell you, I have a 21-year-old woman in my course right now.
Oh, wow.
So I have non-parents, I have fathers, I have, cisgender, straight, gay, all kinds of people from all over the world who join my coaching institute, because they truly see the pain from their own childhood, and they want to make a difference in other children's childhoods. Because of that, so whether you're a parent or not, but because you have experienced your own childhood and you're suffering from its wreckage, you want to help other parents, and that's the qualification to enter my institute.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Shefali, for joining us today. So much amazing information. I'm really glad that you were able to join Amy and I on this really wonderful conversation and build better bonds and relationships with our kids so that we can hopefully prevent any substance use in their future, and also just have great relationships as a family.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's all for now. Tune in next week for more of Awkward Conversations Season 4. Nearly 21 million Americans have at least one addiction, yet only 10% of them receive treatment. Research shows that addressing substance use early, especially during adolescence, goes a long way in preventing issues throughout their lives.
Substance use disorders are chronic medical conditions, but in the more simpler terms, it's essentially people continuing to use substances despite consequences in their life. People may, initiate substance use and not experience consequences right away, but over time that use escalates. There are changes that happen in the brain that make it more difficult to quit substance or discontinue substances. Some people refer to substance use disorders as addiction, but typically in clinical terms, we prefer the term substance use disorder because addict, derived from addiction, carries a lot of negative connotations and stigma.
Recovery is real and builds hope for others that they too, can find support and find the things that they need to stay sober.
We tend to rely on psychosocial treatments, different types of therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, contingency management, other therapies that are not medication based. You're not alone. People have walked this path before you, and so lean in to those networks. There are resources that are available to help parents who are trying to navigate this with their children, or parents like me who are trying to be prepared to navigate this with their children as they start to enter their teenage years.
Make sure to check out getsmartaboutdrugs.com. Parents, caregivers, you can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all-volunteer nationwide drug awareness program, and also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.